It'll take a few minutes. Please do a good job of maintaining your focus as you're waiting for that super exciting seating chart. And we get started here. Welcome to chemistry. No chemistry yesterday because we never have chemistry on Tuesday. None of you will have chemistry on your Tuesday schedule. Mondays we meet for 2 mods. Either with myself, Mr. Kelleher, or Mr. Gosse. Whomever you have for your Monday teacher is your TOR, your teacher of record, which means anytime in this first semester you're turning in homework, if you have me as your instructor on Monday, you will always turn your homework into me. Mr. Gosse is going to explain to you how to turn that in. Not confusing. But it doesn't matter whether you get the homework on Monday, if it's due Monday, or if you get it on Thursday and it's due Friday. If you have me for class on Monday, all of your homework comes to me. And of course, the same goes true for Mr. Gosse. If you have Mr. Gosse, all of your stuff gets turned into Mr. Gosse the entire first semester, regardless of when it's due, when it was assigned. Okay? So that's Monday. No class on Tuesday. You got lots of other classes, but no chemistry. On Wednesday, we're always in here. Again, it's for 2 mods. This is going to be the primary big lecture day of the week, which some of you may find exciting, some of you may not. Doesn't matter. It's the big day. If you've got a conflict, we would strongly encourage you to make it to this class. We do record it, or at least try to record it, barring any sort of technology difficulties, but this is the big lecture of the week. On Thursday we meet for 1 mod. That's usually to discuss or kind of wrap up or talk about what we've done the previous day in terms of helping with problems and things. And then on Friday it's another 2 mod class. We usually have 1 lab a week, not a guarantee, but the labs are typically going to be on either Monday or Friday. And you picked up a schedule on your way in. You can see that it's never really a secret what we're doing, when you're getting homework, when that homework is due. PLT is an excellent opportunity to do that homework. There's lots of places you can go. You got choices of social studies, math, science, and English Resource Center. You guys are all, I think, sophomores, maybe juniors, but at least probably not freshmen. So you're well familiar with the FlexMod schedule and what the POT, personal learning time, represents. Please use that time wisely. If you do, then you can eventually earn that opportunity to go down to Commons during your PLT, which should still be a productive work area. Science Resource Center is an excellent place to go during your PLT. Mr. Smarava is in there almost full time, probably 90% of the different mods over the course of the week. He's in there. There's, I think, always at least 1 other science teacher in there, whether it's Mr. Gosse, Mr. Kelleher, myself, Mr. Anderson, Mrs. Wirtz, or any of the other science teachers. If we are in there and you're looking for help in chemistry, by all means ask. Mr. Smarava is a certified science teacher. He is very strong in chemistry as well, but he's not the only one in there that can help you. Don't be shy. If you need help, use that Science Resource Center. It's there for your benefit. In the Science Resource Center, Mr. Gosse will be talking about homework a little bit later, but we do have solutions in a binder to virtually all of the homework worksheets or things that you'll get. It's strongly encouraged that you go in there, do the homework, and then go to check the solutions, not the other way around. That's me. I'm wearing the same pullover there that I am here. It's pretty neat. A little bit about myself. I went to UWSP, graduated at Stevens Point back in a long time ago with a major in chemistry, a minor in physics, and if you're familiar with me at all, you know that those are the classes I teach: physics, AP Physics, and chemistry. Big Badger fan. Also an Alabama fan a little bit. I had a dog named Bama when I was a kid because when I was playing football in high school, we ran the wishbone offense and Alabama ran the wishbone offense at that time. If you don't play football, you could really care less. It doesn't really matter. But because of that, I named my dog Bama, and he got run over by a car and survived because he's a tough nut, and more importantly, he was a wiener dog. And so when the car drove over him, he was about this tall and the car was about this high, and clipped him a little bit. He did a little barrel roll as the car went over, and as soon as the car went by, he did a little look around and said, I'm going right back where I came from. So he went right back in the yard and was happy to see me, and no worse for wear. Also a big fan of Lord of the Rings. When I was in high school, I read the Lord of the Rings as a freshman and as a junior, and at that point I decided I was going to try to read the Lord of the Rings every couple of years. That lasted for about 4 years. Game of Thrones. Took me a while to catch up with Game of Thrones. I kind of got behind for a while, but I am up to speed now. Mr. Gosse no longer has that to hold over my head. In terms of music, big fan of Al Green. I'm sure all of you know who Al Green is. Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals, been a Cardinal fan since I learned how to throw and catch and swing a bat. And fortunately, they've been very successful, and I've been able to enjoy many of their 11 World Series championships. Big Packer fan. Mr. Gosse does not like World Series championships, apparently. Went to school in Broadhead, which is south of Madison. Our football team was a co-op with Broadhead Judah, which you'll hear other co-op schools, and you've probably heard of that before. Played football, basketball, and baseball in high school. And finally, one more musical taste is Lou Reed, founding member of the Velvet Underground, quite possibly the most influential rock band of the 1960s, with the exception of possibly the Rolling Stones or the Beatles. That's all I got.
Hey, that's Mr. Blackford. I'm Mr. Gosse. I did not get the memo. I'm not wearing the same outfit here. I'm from Appleton West. Just like our logo, if you don't know, is the Notre Dame body with a different head. They are Bucky Badger with a wolf head, so really creative. Then I went to a private college in Minnesota called St. Olaf College. It's in Northfield. It's about an hour south of the Twin Cities. Another school's in that same town called Carleton, and Malto Meal's there. So that's generic cereal. So when the winds were right, it was like Cinnamon Toast Crunch or other things blowing our way. It was pretty sweet. Did some graduate work at University of Minnesota. I taught at a place called Como Park that's in St. Paul, and it was right next to this big park called Como Park, and a free zoo that has a neurotic polar bear that just swims back and forth. And it's cool in the beginning, and then you start really feeling bad for it, so I hope it's still there. I am one of the tennis coaches for both boys and girls tennis. I am an Eagle Scout. I love the Packers. I am a fan of the Cubs, who have most recently won a World Series over the fact that the Cardinals have not. I am an avid golfer when I actually am able to get out. I like Stone Temple Pilots, one of the best bands from the 1990s. I am sure you know more of their songs than you realize if you start hearing them. I had a Chipotle addiction, so much that people would say, like, dude, you know him, he comes here all the time, and that's when I knew I had a problem. So I don't go there as often any longer, but I still love it. I have to literally not drive past it. My favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut. I love here's a TV rundown. Love Breaking Bad. I am addicted right now to Office reruns. Can't get enough of those. Like The Walking Dead. Modern Family, love it. And Game of Thrones, I watched it as it was happening. So I was very up to date. Mr. Kelleher.
I'm Mr. Kelleher. I went to high school over on the western side of the state. It was a consolidated school district between 3 towns, Gelsville, Ettrick, and Trumbull. Probably never heard of them. It's over by the Mississippi River by La Crosse. When I went there, it was the Red Men, but now it's the Red Hawks, so that was not the symbol that we had when I was in high school. It changed, but Unfortunately, the towns in the order that they are, Gale, Ettrick, Trumpelow, it's abbreviated as GET a lot, so you'll hear about get schools is like their thing. So everybody said, oh, get schools. Well, when you get to high school, that's get high, which I'm sure some people did, not me. It was not me. But then when I decided I wanted to go to college, I decided I'd go to St. Norbert College. That was kind of an interesting one. I never heard of St. Norbert College, but I was taking a class in high school, and we got like a thing in the magazine that said like St. Norbert was like one of the best schools in the Midwest. The year I was a senior, so when I went there, they never got ranked again. I'm not sure if it's my fault or not. After that, I decided to get some more certifications besides just teaching biology, so I wanted to teach chemistry and like earth science and physics. So I went to River Falls, so I went back over the other side of the state, then I came back to UW-GB, and I went back to the other side of the state to UW-Cross, and finally got enough so I could finally feel like I could teach something. I also love golf, like Mr. Gosse. I've been doing golfing since I was a little kid. It's one of my favorite sports by far. I've played a lot of sports, and that one I stuck with, got in my blood, and it's never gotten out. I'm a model railroader. I love little itty bitty trains. My dad was worked for railroads in La Crosse, the Burlington Northern Railroad. So I love playing with model trains, and I'm part of the Green Bay Model Train Club, and they have like a little shed at the National Railroad Museum in Green Bay. If you've ever been there, they got like a model train. I help with that every once in a while. I'm also a Cardinals fan. Yay, Cardinals, 11 World Championships. That's because my dad grew up in Iowa, and he was a huge Cardinals fan, so of course all of us kids had to become Cardinal fans. Speaking of another St. Louis connection, I love hockey too. So I'm a St. Louis Blues fan just because, well, I like music, and when I was growing up, Brett Hull was my favorite player, and he played for the Blues. Of course, I love the Packers because I was born and lived in Wisconsin my whole life, so I gotta love the Packers. My musical tastes are a little bit different than our other chemistry teachers. I like more classical, harder rock. Like that's Led Zeppelin in the representation of symbols from their albums, and AC/DC. Gotta love AC/DC. Thunder from Down Under. I love Law & Order. It's one of my favorite TV shows. If there's a binge-a-thon going on one of the networks, I will probably not get your tests and homework graded because I'll probably be watching it. And then a couple of other things. I like Star Trek, especially the new reboot series. I really like that one a lot. My favorite science fiction movie, though, is Fifth Element, and I love Westerns. I love old school Western kind of movies. Probably another tie-in for my dad because he always loved them too. So that's me.
All right, that's all pretty neat. Let's start talking about chemistry now. The breakdown of your grading system. 55% of it is going to be tests and quizzes, 15% of it is homework, 30% of it is labs. All of it is important. You'll see that the homework is the smallest percentage of your grade. So you might think, well, it's not worth very much, it's not worth doing. Well, obviously, hopefully it's obvious. If you don't do the homework, you're going to have to sit up because I'm not going to watch you sleep. If you don't do the homework, then you don't know how to do what's on the test. And I referred to that solutions manual in the Resource Center earlier. We give homework probably a couple times a week. You have access to help, you've got access to solutions, but again, you do the homework for the same reason that anybody else gives you homework, which is practice and experience, so you know what to do when this happens or what to do when this happens. So please do the homework. By all means, you work together, help each other out, check the solution, see if you're doing it correctly, but don't do it the other way around because it's very quick for us to recognize who goes into the Resource Center, copies the homework, gets 100% on that puny little 15% portion of your grade. But because you copied it, you don't know what you're doing, and then when the 55% assessment comes up, not good. Okay? So it's in your best interest to do things the right way. Okay? Labs, as I said, are roughly once a week. There's almost always a lab component on the assessment, on the test. So when we have labs, you got to make sure that you take part in the labs and complete them. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more in just a moment. If you want a textbook, we can get you a textbook. We don't issue textbooks. There's roughly 200 students in chemistry this year. We've got about 150 textbooks. So we certainly have enough that if you want one, you can have one. But we don't have enough for every single person. You don't really need the textbook. We very seldom give assignments out of the textbook. It's a good reference, good supplemental resource. There are textbooks in the back of the resource center, and if you're struggling with some particular concept and you want to check out a textbook for a week or a few days, you can do that with any of us. But if you do want one for the year, let us know and we'll hook you up. Labs, as I said, roughly once a week. When the labs are done, we expect you to be there. We expect you to take part in the lab, be a productive and helpful group member. If you miss a lab, you need to make it up. We don't excuse labs just because you weren't here. As I said, there's going to be a lab component on virtually every test, so there's going to be at least a couple of questions on there that deal with the concepts that were experienced and hopefully learned through the course of doing the lab. For that reason, that's one of the reasons that we want you to make them up in a timely manner. Our deadline is going to be 2 weeks. If you haven't done it in 2 weeks, then a couple of things happen. You probably didn't get it done before you took the test, which doesn't help you out. And we're tired of having all that stuff out, waiting for you to come in and do it. So we've got a lot of expensive equipment, and as I said, we do labs every week, so when we change from one lab to the next, we've got to take that other stuff down and put the new stuff up, and we don't want to keep taking out and putting away and getting out and putting away stuff because you didn't do the lab until the following week, and then you didn't do the lab until the week after that, and then you didn't do the lab until the last week of the semester. So Mr. Gosse is going to talk to you about making the arrangements to get those labs made up, but 2 weeks is your window.
All right, so with labs, we'll talk about safety, we'll talk about labs and all that other stuff. We sent you an email and your parents yesterday. There was a lot of stuff there. I understand if you didn't read it all yet. But two of the things are lab books and goggles. Okay, so maybe you have goggles from middle school. Maybe you have goggles some other way, sibling, something like that. But you need splash-proof goggles. You can use a class set or you could get your own. And we do sell those. And if you want to buy a set, you can actually dye them yourselves and customize them. And there's all sorts of cool ways you can do it. The lab book, it's a carbonless copy, meaning that when you write on it, it doubles it up, and you can rip one out and you keep the other one in there. And if you're interested in taking, let's see, AP Chem, AP Environmental Science, any kind of physics, you can use that book for that class as well. So it's almost 2 for 1, and it's a lot less expensive than any book I've been able to find because we buy it in bulk. So what we need, and if you're feeling shaky about your decision, that's fine, but we need you to at least tell us your initial idea of what you're thinking. So with your iPads, I'm an old man, so I guess I am probably telling you stuff you already know, but a lot of people try and get out a QR reader with this. You don't need that. You just use the camera and you touch the screen and it takes you right there. You need to answer 2 questions. 1, I am interested in buying a new lab book, or I have access to a book that is at least 50% empty. And it's not, oh, my friend Jessica and I both have chemistry, but we have different hours. That's not what I mean. It means somebody who has graduated, or that book is not going to be used at all. And it's been used in other classes of some sort, and you'd like to just continue on. We are fine with that. One thing you will need to know on there is what is your Monday class. So this is a good time to revisit if you don't already know. You need to know who your Monday teacher is in chemistry. That is going to be useful in everything we do this semester. So if you don't know, please look it up right now. Do you have Mr. Kelleher 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Do you have Mr. Blackford 7, 8, or 9, 10? Or do you have me, Mr. Gosse, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13, 14? On Monday. That is going to be true with homework. It's going to be true with everything we do is that Monday teacher. So look that up. The other question we have for you is goggles. Do you want a new pair? They're $7. That's, again, an amazing deal, honestly. And you get to dye them. So you can create any colors. You can make some pretty cool colors. You can put colors on all different parts of it that are different. You can do them all in one. You can do half and half. I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities. Or you can use a class set, or you have your own that you're bringing. If you have another pair, we allow you to dye those as well. So those are your three options. I'm bringing one, or I want to buy, I have my own, or I'm just going to use the class set. And I do apologize, people way over here, sometimes you guys have a hard time. I don't know why, it just doesn't take, so if you need to get up and do it, please do so. But we need you to get in on this. Please don't feel like if you made a decision that you have to, like you're stuck now. If you and your parents discuss this and you're like, you know what, I think we should do this or change that, that's okay. But we need a general initial idea of what you are thinking about, okay? So once you have that, you don't need your iPads anymore. It actually gives me an idea of how far we are along by putting those away once you're done. Sorry. And pretty easy questions. Last year we got them a little late, so we didn't use them as often, but we're going to use probably a good third or so of it. But that'll leave enough for at least one more class for you, depending on what you take. If you want it, if you're going to take another class that uses them. Okay? So I am moving forward. If you need it later, we'll bring it back up. Okay? So a couple things. Not asking you to memorize this, but it's a good visual. B again is Blackford, G is Gosse, K is Kelleher. These are all the openings that we have. So all the yellow are when we are available, either in the resource room or in our room not teaching. You notice, if you have any makeups, if you have any ability to get in before homeroom to make up a lab or get extra help, huge. I mean, that's as easy as it gets. Like, you don't even have to worry about it. Tuesdays and Thursdays are really wide open for you as well. Why I bring this up again, all of you are going to miss lab at some point. Now, we are trying to work through Canvas that you might be able to schedule a lab with us, but if you miss a lab, come talk to one of us. Hey, Mr. Blackford, I was hoping that I could make up a lab with you, next on Thursday, 3-4, and he'll probably be like, that's great, I'll see you then. Please try to do that as often as you can. I guess don't be taken back. Assess the situation when you come in and it's been like 3 weeks and all of a sudden you ask, can I do a lab right now? And you act like it was almost like already determined, and that's the first time we're hearing about it. That gets tricky. We might be in the middle of a class. We might have already been putting some of that away. So just plan ahead. Let us know. We'll be much more receptive if we can have a little bit of a heads up. I think this is a good reminder in general. None of us grew up with this schedule. I honestly wish I did have it. Beginning of the week, not just chemistry. Plan out your week. We've heard that from all sorts of schools that have been doing these schedules, the FlexMod, for 20 or 30 years. A student, if you can, so if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Think about the beginning of your week. When do you have openings versus some of your teachers? Like, I need to talk to Mr. Martinson this week about blank, or Mrs. Brilski, I got to make up something with her. Well, when can you get in there? Because the worst feeling in the world is all of a sudden like, I need to get this done. It's Thursday, and you're like, oh shoot, I should have done that on a Monday or Tuesday. So kind of get familiar with your teacher's schedules a little bit. I'm not saying memorize them, my gosh, but it helps. It really does. All right, flying through a couple things. We understand, though, that you guys are going to be meeting at different times of the week with different teachers. So to be real clear, you will always hand it in. Let's say you have Mr. Kelleher 1-2, but you have me during 9th mod on a Thursday. You will still hand it in to his slot. I'll show you that in a second. And everybody, no matter when you have class, the due date, let's say it's tomorrow or next Tuesday or whenever, all homework will be due at 3:10 on that day. You can hand it in early. My gosh, it's due in 3 days. You finish it tomorrow, hand it in early. The worst thing, I get uncomfortable and I feel bad about it, but when you say, but I had it done, and it's been sitting in your folder, well, why did you not just hand it in? I forgot. Well, I hope that you don't forget next time. It's going to be late, so make sure you get it in by 3:10. So let's talk about that. This is in the back of the resource room. This is as simple as it can get. So you look, let's say you have Kelleher 1-2. Here's Blackford, Gosse, Kelleher. You would always put it in this slot no matter what. So your Monday class only. So tomorrow you have me 9, but you have him on Monday 1-2. That's where you hand in your homework every single time. okay? There will be 3 of you or so that will not understand this, and you will continually put it somewhere else. We will hunt you down, and hopefully we can figure that out. But that's what you're going to do. So we were told that this was really difficult. This was really hard, and students were telling their parents, it's so hard. They make it so hard for us to hand in homework. We got to take it to this other room, and it's always in this slot, and I'm not making any of that up. So in the most sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek way that I know how, I made a video showing how hard this really is. So this is the challenge that awaits you on a daily basis. So good luck.
Science Resource Center, and then you got to go in the back, and then you have all these choices, same slot every time. They are good. And as it says, it is that easy. So, I know. We really actually were told for like a whole year how hard that was. This shouldn't be an issue based on how we do this, but if you do hand in something late, homework, it's not worth as much, and we give you enough time, and honestly, homework is practice. As much as you want to view that as jumping through hoops or whatever you want, we give you the answer keys in the resource room for you to use. If you hand it in even a day late, it's a 4th points. So, honestly, saying something like, but I had it done, I understand that, I'm sorry, it's late. Unless if there's some real valid reason, it's late. And obviously, if there's a reason, have a discussion with us. Labs are half points. Labs are always half points because there's less of them. We give more time, but we're wanting to make sure that we are still doing that work. So we understand that if we did a 1/4 of the points on something like that, unfortunately, it might have a side backlash on that, and people may not be working on the labs on their own as much. So anyway, just know that. So, a lot of you are always interested in extra credit. Some of you view extra credit incorrectly. So we give you a 100-point project and you're like, whatever. But then we give you a 5-point extra credit assignment and you work like 3 weeks on it and you hand it in and you're so pumped and you're like, why am I failing this class? I did extra credit. Well, I don't know about you, but it's not magical math. Plus 5 minus 100 is negative 95. So it doesn't fix that. Extra credit is when I am at a C minus or a D plus, might bump me up. I'm at an A minus or a B plus. You shouldn't be at a C plus, do some extra credit and think, can I get an A now? Like that's not the way it's supposed to be. And if you think that's the way it is, then either if that's happened to you, congratulations, that is awesome, but that's not gonna work in chemistry class. But we are gonna give some extra credit, we are. So you have 3 options every quarter, but you can only do one of these. And please ask questions later on because all of you are going to do this the day before the quarter's up. We know that's the way it'll work, right? You can do a science report. So you can find any article on the internet. So something interesting. We have some links on our website, which right now is not working. I've gotten a lot of emails from parents letting me know. So something's wrong with the link. But find something that's interesting to you. It shouldn't be like CO2 levels increased back in 20,000 BC, and which caused the thumb joints of the T-Rex to elongate by 1 millimeter. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be hard to get a page. But if you're like, wow, tomatoes cause cancer in cats when they're at altitudes above 10, wow! And then you're just typing, and the next thing you know, you're already done with the page. So find something that's interesting to you. If it's interesting to you, it'll be interesting to us. You all know when something's actually interesting and fun for you, it doesn't seem like it's as much work. So you can do that once a quarter. Yes, you can double space. Don't all of a sudden get all like, oh, if I quadruple space it and change the margins, I was going to trick them. We've invented that, okay? We used to do that stuff too, we know. This one, if you go out of state, you can bring your lab book. Now there are some rules on this. You only get 10 points instead of 15 unless if it's in something in front of something science-y. What does that mean? You'll know it when you see it. So if it's a hospital or a school of science or something like that. So this is only 10 points, but this could be you. Or you could go to Paris. or somehow you got there, or you're at the VMAs with Miley Cyrus. The point is, you could get extra credit. The last one is more confusing, and it's really not going to make sense right now. First off, we're not asking for a pet mole, okay? Please do not bring animals in our room. That's biology. But anything sciencey, we'll talk about that later, especially moles, but it can't be repeats. So for example, I know I have one of these in my room. I think Mr. Kelleher has the same one. We don't want like 17 bottles of mole in our room. So anywho, we'll let you know, but we're not asking you to spend like $40. Like Mr. Gosse really wants a $40 plush mad scientist doll. I have to get it for him. Like, not asking for that. Okay, so finish up 4 quarters, 1 extra credit per quarter, 60 bonus points, and you guys will have extra opportunities. So the moral of the story is, if you're on the borderline of a grade and we look back and you've done nothing to help yourself on either quarter, there's no way that we would ever even think about potentially considering where you're at if your grade can shift. Last quick thing, and then I got to give it up to Mr. Kelleher. Quickly, I want you to just take a look at this. It's called an assignment sheet. You will get this every chapter, okay? I want you to just realize on the left, it gives you what type of class it is. So like Monday's a lab, that's a 2-mod class. Thursday's a small group, that's a 1-mod class. The big thing you want to see is the last 2 columns. Under homework assigned, it's when we assigned it. If we make a mistake or forget something, it might go down to the next day. You can definitely draw on it if you want. But that same one, so we're handing out converting T-charts today, it then tells you when it's due. The beauty of this is also it links with the worksheets, and the worksheets will also tell you on there the due date. So you can't be like, I didn't know. It's on there, and it will always be typed on your worksheet. So, very important, you can always work ahead. You can like, oh, I'm going down to Sheboygan for a game. I need to get that printed off online, or I'm going to go see Mr. Kelleher and he'll get me a copy beforehand so I can work ahead if you're interested in doing that so you don't fall behind. All right, so Mr. Kelleher is going to talk about stuff that we are going to be applying all year long, but we probably know how to do it already.
Woohoo! All right, so take out the note sheet that you should have picked up with your assignment sheet that says Adams at the top. You want to get the smaller one, is the one that's in the box, and starts off with dimensional analysis. Right there, dimensional analysis. Really, it's converting units. I mean, that's really what it is, but it really sounds kind of cool. Dimensional analysis is official definition straight from Google. They're physical quantities. Physical quantities are just things you can measure. Measurements of things like temperature or mass or volume. And we have different ways we can measure those. We can measure volume with like a couple hundred different units of measurement. So it's the relationships between those different measurements that you can have. Like what's the difference between volume measured in liters versus gallons and stuff like that. So we can use that to solve problems then. If we have a measurement in one unit and we want to get it in a different unit, we can do that using dimensional analysis. So first thing we do with it is to, of course, convert units. So number 1 there you want to write down, convert units. So use dimensional analysis to do that. Is it mass divided by volume, or is it volume times mass to get density? Those are the 2 main ways we use dimensional analysis. The one we're going to mainly focus on is in chemistry. That's where it comes from. And it's a tricky unit to work with. It's kind of difficult, and it's used in a lot of different places. So this method that we're going to use, though it's simple right now using units that we're familiar with, like meters, centimeters, inches, feet, stuff like that, working with this system of dimensional analysis now when it's easy will make it easier when we do the harder things later on with moles and stuff like that. Any questions about the first slide here? Sweet. Got chopped off up there, but that's the next one down. Should be converting using equalities and conversion factors. So we're going to focus in on number 1, converting units. So we got the example is always like, how many of whatever is in whatever of something else? Bless you. Like how many gallons are equal to this many liters? Or how many feet are equal to this many meters? So to convert, we need something called an equality, which is an equal relationship. And we know thousands of these. How many quarters are in a dollar? 4. That's an equality. 4 quarters is equal to $1. That's equal amounts. It's an equal amount of money. But it has different numbers and different units of measuring that quantity that you're talking about. So an example would be like 12 eggs is equal to 1 dozen eggs. Different number, 12 and 1. Numbers are different. But the thing we're talking about balances that out. Usually you have something that's a bigger measurement amount, you'll have a smaller number with it. Something that's a smaller measurement will have a bigger number to make it equal, keep it balanced. Another one would be 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. Centimeters is a small measurement unit. Meters is much bigger, so the numbers are opposite to match. A big number to go with centimeters, a smaller number to go with meters. And our last example that we have up here is 5,280 feet in a mile. I hated that one. That one I always screwed up in school. We had to memorize them. We're not going to make you memorize them. I always thought it was 5,820. I always got the 8 and the 2 mixed up. That's just some examples. But like I said, there's hundreds of them. You know a bunch of these. Since they're equal, we can represent them as 2 different fractions. So it's 2 different fractions. Fill in the blanks there. We can make 2 fractions with these equalities that are always equal to 1. The number value of that fraction is 1. Because what would be on top and on the bottom are the same amount. Because they're equal. For example, if we took the eggs equality that we have up here, 12 eggs is equal to a dozen eggs. If I wrote that as a fraction like this, that equals 1, because what's on top is the same amount that's on the bottom. That equals 1. What if I wrote that upside down? We can write 2 fractions, right? I could flip that upside down. Does that equal the same thing? Yeah, because the top and bottom are the same. So here are our 2 fractions that we can write. And those, when we write them as a fraction, we write an equality like this as a fraction, we give it kind of a special name, a 2-word name called conversion factor. So that's like another fill in the blank thing that's at the bottom there, conversion factor. So you'll hear that vocabulary a lot, like what's our conversion factor we want to use? So it's going to be one of these fractions. And which one do you use depends upon what you're trying to convert from and to. Are you trying to get to how many individual eggs do you have, or you want to know how many dozen you have? That will dictate which one of these 2 you're going to use. Some of you have probably done this before, and that's awesome. You're ahead of the game. You can probably help out other people while you're doing some of the homework. Obviously, this is a little bit new, but it's going to be something familiar to you. It's very familiar math that we're going to be doing. Any questions about this slide? All right, let's move on to an example then. Example number 1. So this one, we're looking for how many pints there are if we know how many fluid ounces we have. 116 fluid ounces. Nobody knows this one off the top of their head. If they did, they're like a evil genius of some sort. So the first thing we need to kind of think about is, okay, do we know any equalities between these 2 units of measurement? Do we know how much of one is equal to how much of another one, of the other one? In this case, we do have that conversion. We do have an equality. 1 pint is 16 fluid ounces. I believe a cup is like 8 fluid ounces, so there's 2 cups in a pint. So I thought it was kind of weird. Like, anybody ever watch Little House on the Prairie? Yeah. Like the, what was his name? Charles Ingalls, his daughter, was it Mary or was it Laura? Laura was the one who always called half pint. I'm like, why don't you just call her a cup? Like a half a pint would be a cup. But half pint sounds cuter. So in order to do these, in order to do a dimensional analysis, we draw out what's called a T-chart. A T-chart. And this is what a T-chart looks like. It looks like a really big fat plus sign. So it's kind of like a T. Is that a T? So go ahead, you got some space. I think you can draw that T-chart in there. Hopefully you got some room to be able to write a couple of things in here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the information from our problem. So our problem is the main question we started with. 116 fluid ounces, we want to know how many pints that is. So we're going to put our given information in that top left-hand corner spot. So the information we are given is 116 fluid ounces. It'll always be a number with a unit. We wouldn't want to put just pint there because there's no number. We need the one that has the number that goes with it. For now, in the bottom down here, we're not going to put anything. You really don't have to write anything there. Just know that this is going to be kind of blank. Some people freak out about it. If you do think mathematically in terms of a fraction, you can just put the number 1 there. It really doesn't change anything by putting a 1 there. But most of the time, we just leave that blank. So what goes on the other side of our t? Well, that's going to be our conversion factor. We're going to write that as a fraction. So up on top, we're going to have a numerator, and on the bottom, we'll have a denominator. Now the question is, we can make 2 conversion factors. We can get 2 of those fractions from this equality. We could have 1 pint over 16 fluid ounces, or we could have 16 fluid ounces on top over 1 pint. So which one do we use? That's the question. Anybody know? 16 fluid ounces on the top. So it would be that bottom one. Well, it's probably not going to be that one. It's a good guess. You had a 50-50 shot. It's a good guess. We want it to be so that those units cancel out. We want the units to be on opposite sides. So if I got fluid ounces on top, I want the fluid ounces to be the one on the bottom. Remember I said it depends on what it is you're starting with and where you're going to. If we had started with pints up here, if our measurement was in pints, we would want to use this one. Because then we would have pints on the bottom, we'd be changing it to fluid ounces. So always look at that important piece of information. Are your units that are the same on opposite sides? One in the numerator, one in the denominator spot. So that's the one we want to use. We want to use 1 pint over 16 fluid ounces. Any questions about that? Cool. So far, so good. So really, this is just the process of kind of structurally setting things up to be able to do some math with it. We're just really doing math with fractions. And this is kind of a little bit an easier way of doing it than having just gross-looking math problems. This makes things a little bit cleaner to work with. So the reason why we do that is mathematical, because we're working with fractions. So I think that's a blank, you got to fill in fractions or something like that. Well, that'd be on the back side, sorry, yeah. Flip it over to the back side, that's where this one's located. So we're working with fractions here, essentially. A t-chart is just combining, mathematically multiplying, essentially, fractions together. So anything that's written along the top of your t-chart are numerators. Things that are written along the bottom of your t-chart are going to be denominators. Denominator. Sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger should be teaching this. And we write that so those units cancel out, and then we can just do the math to simplify and get what our number value would be. So in this case, the one we have on the previous slide, 116 fluid ounces. We multiply with this conversion factor so the fluid ounces cancel out. That leaves us with the unit we want, which is pint. Woo, pint. So that's the dimensional analysis part. The dimensional analysis is analyzing your units, making sure your units cancel out to get you the one unit you want. That's the dimension, is the unit dimension of measurement. So we're still not quite done. There's one last thing left to do, and that's the math. We need to reduce these fractions now. Reduce it down to a single number value. So how do you do that? Well, just like you do with any kind of fractions, if you're along the top, numerators you're going to multiply together. So you multiply by numerators along the top. So 116 would be times 1. Although you really don't need to do the times 1 because that doesn't do anything. And anything that's on the bottom are denominators, and denominators are dividing. We'll start with a D, divide by your denominator. So the math is really 116 times 1, divide by 16. And that comes out to a beautiful answer of 7.25. So 116 fluid ounces is 7 1/4 pints. Don't forget the unit when you do these. So easy to just think about the numbers at the very end because you're doing the numbers at the number stuff at the end. You forget, oh yeah, it's supposed to be a unit of measurement that goes with that. I wanted to get that pints. Multiply numerators on the top, divide by denominator numbers on the bottom. It's that easy. Could you have divided by 16 first and then multiplied by 1? Absolutely. When multiplying and dividing, it's the same order of operations. It doesn't matter the order that you do them in. It's kind of nice about multiplying and dividing. Any questions about this slide at all? Ready for example number 2? Awesome. We'll do example number 2. This one we're trying to find out how many fluid ounces are in a gallon. So we need some equalities. We're going to need 3 equalities. One that we just looked at, a pint is 16 fluid ounces. I don't know how many pints were in a gallon though, but I did know that there's 2 pints in a quart.
There's 16 cups in a gallon, so that would mean there's 8 pints in a gallon, right?
Yeah, that would make sense. Especially when you do that, 2 times 4 would be 8. Yep.
So that would be 228 ounces would be in a gallon.
Not 228.
128.
128. Yeah. But if you don't know that off the top of your head, you're going to have to do conversion factors in order to get that. Just remember it's a process. You're taking from one spot and trying to get to another one. Sometimes you might have to plug in a couple of things in between. It's not always a nice one-step shot to get to the answer you're looking for. So draw your T-chart in. You should have space there to be able to draw your T-chart in. Put 1 gallon on top. And remember, we want gallons to cancel out, so I'm going to use that equality. The conversion factor I want is 4 quarts over 1 gallon. But I'm not done because I'm at quarts, so I got to use this conversion. 2 pints over 1 quart. But I'm still not done. I got one more step I'm going to have to get to. I got to use that 16 and 1 pints to fluid ounces. So everything cancels out. I'm left with my fluid ounces. Don't worry about writing down much of the words, just get the math part down. 4 times 2 times 16, because all of those numbers are up on top. 4 times 2 times 16, everything else are ones. Don't have to worry about multiplying or dividing by 1. So yep, there it is, 128. All right, awesome. And your homework sheet should be handed out to you, being handed out, so make sure you grab one. I'm going to try to go through example number 3 really fast. Don't worry about writing down too much of the words and stuff. Just make sure you get the T-chart down. Anybody need that T-chart up for a little bit longer for this one? Oh, good. All right, so we're going to zip through this one. Some of the equalities we need for this one, because we're going from meters per second, which is a weird unit that's got 2 things in it. It's got distance and a time. Well, we're going to use a distance one to go from miles and meters. We're also going to need some time equalities. That's a little different. Now make sure you write down this conversion factor, or this T-chart. Notice how we wrote this one, 12.42 meters. We put something here this time. We didn't leave this blank. We got 1 second, because that unit of measurement's already a fraction. 12.42 meters per 1 second. And then it's just a matter of canceling out our units, do the dimensional analysis. So use our equalities so we can cancel out meters. Cancel out seconds. So this is different. We're writing seconds on top because seconds when we started was on the bottom. And then minutes will cancel out. And we're left with our units of miles per hour. And when you do the math, that divide by that times 60 times 60. So 12.42 divided by 1,609 times 60 times 60. About 28 miles per hour. Fast for a human, but not a cheetah. Any last second questions that you have? Went through that last one kind of fast.
Can you say that again, please? But multiply 42 times by whatever.
Yep, 12.42 is what I would put in my calculator. Don't worry about the 1 because divided by 1 is not going to do anything. My next one I look at, I don't need to multiply by 1, but I do need to divide by this. So 12.42 is in my calculator. I hit divide by 1,609. My next step is on top, so I'm going to multiply. So times 60. And my last one also is at times 60 because 60 is on top. That's the math, and then I'm done. You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, on your sheets, there's always a letter and then a mod. You always write your Monday class no matter what. Okay? Once you start this should only take about 10 to 15 minutes. We ask you to be doing T-charts. We get it. You can divide and multiply. If you're like, well, I could just do it this way. We're trying to teach you a method that we can apply to chemistry later by using things that you can understand in your daily life, okay? So please try to do it with the T-charts. Have a wonderful day. We will see you in small group tomorrow. Start bringing in money. Get envelopes. You can.